members of the Senate, clerk of the Senate, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon once more. May I first take this opportunity to congratulate all the elected senators, indeed also the nominated ones, and indeed also the Speaker, on your election to the various offices of leadership of our country. I convey this from the fraternity of editors in our country, and indeed from the journalists and the media at large. I'd also like to thank the Speaker's office for inviting me as President of the Editors Guild to come and share a word or two in terms of what editors see as you begin this assignment. I've been given 10 minutes to go through a number of slides that I prepared. I think Senator Wambua, knowing what editors do, he made sure that he draws the rules that first demands that I drop my slides, which I've already done. And I'll proceed to just highlight some salient points that I've prepared to share with you this morning, this afternoon. But I do that with a lot of confidence. Confidence because I know that the Senate and the media, especially the Senate and editors, have since developed a tradition that every year we find 1 or 2 days to go into a lot of detail in terms of how each of our entities, each of our fraternities deliver for the people of Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I hope that that's a tradition that we can continue with, and that sometime later this year or next year, we might find that time. I can come with all the senior editors and we get a chance to look at some of the issues that we'll touch on today. Mr. Speaker, sir, ladies and gentlemen, the Kenya Editors Guild is a professional association of editors in Kenyan newsrooms, whose focus ideally is in 4 areas. The first one, which we take very, very seriously and very, very dearly, is to defend and promote media freedom and media independence in Kenya. Indeed, if you read our constitution, the only industry mentioned in the constitution is the media. And I want to believe that you share with me in accepting that the media is critical for the health of our democracy. And we'd like to invite you to help us in defending the independence of the media. And on that score, allow me to pick out one senator for celebration and acknowledgement from the media of Kenya. This senator happened to have been a legislator previously, and when media issues came to the floor, when media came to parliament to fight for his freedom, this senator stood with journalists, stood with the media. Senator Sotsi, the media is grateful. The second key role of the Editors Guild is to uphold quality and ethical journalism. That as we send out reporters as editors, and as they bring back stories to us, and we make judgment on how those stories are handled and published, that we do it with one lens, the lens of the public interest. And we are ever seeking out ways, ever trying to find innovative ways to make sure that that remains true. Amid a lot of challenges, some of which I'll go through shortly. Third, we have a duty as a guild to provide forums for those issues to be debated. So we are very happy to join this afternoon to discuss these issues, because it is yet another forum in which these media issues can be squarely put on the table. And finally, we have to collaborate with other professionals, other entities, and even government to make sure that the Kenyan, or Wanjiku, as we like calling her, is served not just by ourselves, but also by yourselves. But as we move on, allow me to share what I want to believe should be the shared understanding of what journalism is, because journalism is at the core of media. And the one media person that you are going to interact with, if you are going to interact with the media at all, is going to be a journalist. So it is just important that we indeed understand each other in terms of what the mandate of that journalist is. The number one mandate that any news journalist lives to serve is the timely distribution of verifiable information on matters of public interest. Timely distribution of verifiable information on matters of public interest. And as we wake up every morning, as we push our journalists, that's the number one goal we try to get to. The number two goal is to create a platform for the public to debate issues and matters of interest to themselves. And the number three goal is to hold power and privilege accountable. Not to us, but accountable to the public. So in that framing, in each of those three levels, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to suggest that there is a role for the senator. Things stand out for me. The first is what Senator Wambua alluded to. A debate that has been raging for 10 years now. And as people who work in newsrooms, as journalists, like to reduce things to their simplest version so that it can be easily understood. And in the minds of many people, this issue has been framed as, which is the senior house? But today I dare ask, should it matter? Should that question be derived from law, or should it be derived from practice? So is it something that the Constitution donates, or is it something that senators themselves, by practice, is it space that you reach out and own, or is it something that is donated to you by a different entity, a different document? And I also like to suggest that there is acknowledgement huyu nitampatia memo baadaye, lakini for now there is acknowledgement on the role of the Senate. And if anybody doubted, that acknowledgement has been delivered by Kenyans loud and clear in the recent elections. Indeed, that acknowledgement suggests what the core and the soul and the main pillar of our Constitution is. But I'll get there shortly. I'll also share with you fairly quickly, in terms of an overview, what the media ecosystem is, so that you can see the different parts of the media and how they interact and how they play. But we must also speak to the reality in the world today, infodemia. But I'm happy Mark is here. He's a high priest of infodemia, so I'll let deal with a lot of that. But then there are also questions around media regulation, because as Senator Wambua said, the media is the fourth arm of government. And then finally, there's a whole question how each and every senator shows up in those various levels of media. Mr. Speaker, sir, ladies and gentlemen, as we sit here today, there are more than 200 radio stations in our country, most of them broadcasting away from Nairobi and also broadcasting in vernacular, which means they're speaking emotionally to our people. There are 135 TV stations, most of them on the digital platforms, many of which I'm sure we don't know. There are 4 daily newspapers. I want to believe many of us know them. We have 1 weekly. There are more than 100 print publications. There are thousands of blogs and vlogs, and millions of Kenyans are on social media. So put simply, that is the media we are talking about. 5 minutes. So in that media, there's always the question of how does the Senate appear? How does the Senate look? And if you read the Constitution, I think 4 things come out how the Senate should appear. Assuming that we've accepted that the Senate is a protector of devolution. The first one, the Constitution makes a big deal of access to information for the public. So I want to propose that at an individual level and as a collegial, there has to be some deliberate methods and systems put in place to make sure that public access to Senate information is easy and in understandable formats. The second notion that we draw from the Constitution is the rights of communities to participate at all levels of governance. We must ask ourselves, how does Senate translate that right to something practical, to something real for each and every of your voters? There's a notion of citizen platforms. How do the people themselves get to engage, prioritize, and get then to share with you what their hopes and fears are, so that as you take and execute your roles, you indeed speak for those who did vote for you. And then finally, the whole question of public information and public communication, which begins to suggest that the Senate also is a watchdog of other entities. So as you watch over them, you need to also watch in the dimension of public access to information. While preparing for this presentation, we did a simple analysis of the results from the August elections. And we found of those in office today, having recently been elected, 57% of governors are new. 55% of senators are 70% of MCAs are new. 70% of MCAs are new. Compare that to just 39% of members of the National Assembly who are new. Kenyans have spoken loud and clear. Indeed, one might choose to even analyze how Kenyan participated in the presidential elections in 2007, 2013, 2017, and 2022. All of them contested presidential elections. But the attitude and participation of the ordinary voter is very, very different this year compared to previous years. Ladies and gentlemen, my hypothesis is that devolution is no longer a child. It's grown up, and Kenyans have paid attention and are taking very, very keen interest. And more, they are unforgiving in terms of performance for them, if the story of MCS is anything to go by. A few key issues